Welcome to Vanilla Sky, a mind-bending psychological thriller that blends romance and surreal imagery to explore the blurred line between reality and dreams. We start the lineup with our boy David Ames, a wealthy and charismatic publishing heir who leads a seemingly perfect life in New York City. He is the head of a successful magazine empire and enjoys immense financial security and social status. He is often caught between the superficial pleasures of his privileged existence and a yearning for something more meaningful. Sophia Serrano is an aspiring artist and a waitress who becomes a central figure in David's life. Her presence brings David a sense of authenticity and depth, making her a pivotal influence in David's journey of self-discovery. Sophia challenges David to confront his fears and insecurities, prompting him to reevaluate some of his life choices. Jolie Gianni is the troubled ex-girlfriend of David. She is initially presented as a vibrant and alluring figure who becomes obsessed with him after their romantic involvement, but her emotional instability and possessive behavior soon emerge. She struggles with feelings of inadequacy and a fear of abandonment, which manifests in her desperate attempts to regain David's affection. McCabe serves as a psychologist for David throughout his transformative journey. He is responsible for helping David navigate the psychological turmoil resulting from the traumatic events in his life. Brian Shelby is David's best friend and confidant. He is an aspiring filmmaker and represents a contrast to David's privileged lifestyle, often encouraging David to embrace a more authentic existence. Brian is supportive and genuinely cares for David, offering him advice and perspective on relationships. Edmund Ventura is the tech support representative from Life Extension who helps David understand the nature of his reality. He pushes David to examine the choices he has made and the paths he has taken. Edmund ultimately bridges the gap between David's confusion and his final moment of clarity. We open with our boy David Ames, waking up in his luxurious Manhattan apartment and going through his morning routine. He decides to take his Ferrari for a drive around an eerily empty New York City. Times Square, normally pulsing with energy, stood frozen and abandoned. His foot hit the brake. He stepped out, turning in circles, panic quickening his breath. He ran through the desolate streets, desperate for an explanation. Then, suddenly, he wakes up. It was just a dream. David wakes up in his apartment, this time in reality. He gets out of bed with Jolie Gianni, a casual lover who is clearly more emotionally attached to him than he is to her. He rushes out the door and notices that the city is buzzing with people. He picks up his boy Brian Shelby, and they talk about blowing off work and discussing David's sexual conquest. He nearly hits a man on a bicycle, and a large truck narrowly avoids plowing into his car, to which he nonchalantly laughs and continues driving. He stops at his publishing company, and we see tension between David and the board of directors, especially his late father's old friends, whom he calls the Seven Dwarves, due to their condescending nature. We cut to David in a prison wearing a silicone mask talking to McCabe. He appears to have a psychotic break when McCabe mentions he has been charged with murder, to which David denies. They go into a deep dive about David's father's extravagant life, and it appears David feels he can never live up to him. He explains how the board is jealous of his inheritance and has framed him for murder. David throws a lavish birthday party attended by high-profile guests, filled with friends, music, and a lively atmosphere. Brian arrives alongside Sophia, whom David is instantly drawn to. Sophia immediately captivates David with her charm, warmth, and authenticity, a stark contrast to the superficiality of his usual encounters. Their chemistry is instant, and they engage in a flirtatious yet meaningful conversation, bonding over art, fate, and the power of a single moment. Their interaction is cut short when Jolie Gianni arrives, foreshadowing the tragic events that follow. Jolie follows David when he leaves the room, attempting to seduce him. She expresses her jealousy for Sophia while kissing David, who clearly isn't interested. He denies her and leaves her naked under a blanket to rejoin his guests. David finds Sophia again and is instantly enamored by her genuine and down-to-earth nature, seeing something different in her from the women he typically meets. This scene establishes the emotional core of the film, as Sophia represents a sense of true connection and possibility for David. Jolie, who has rejoined the party, watches from across the room, her expression darkening. David leaves with Sophia and spends the night at her apartment. As they settle in, their chemistry deepens. They talk freely, sharing personal stories and philosophies on life, love, and happiness. They both sketch each other, and she teasingly calls her drawing a work in progress, a subtle metaphor for his own journey. They spoon on the couch until morning arrives, and with it, the real world. Before David leaves, she calls him over and kisses him. He places his number on the fridge and leaves the apartment, visibly ecstatic, walking to his car. As David steps onto the sidewalk outside Sophia's apartment, he spotted Jolie waiting in her car. She asks about Sophia and invites David to make it up to her. Against his better judgment, he slid into the passenger seat. The ride started smooth, but then Jolie's voice turned sharp. She speaks about love, about how it can destroy a person. She asks why David would tell Brian she is a fuck buddy. Her eyes burned with an intensity David had never seen before. Then she hits the gas. David's heart pounds as he reaches for the wheel, but it was too late. The car hurtled off the edge of a bridge, crashing into a wall. The world explodes into glass and metal, and then darkness. We cut to David talking to Sophia in a park, explaining how he had a dream that his stalker drove off a bridge with him in the car. He survives, but his arm and face have been reconstructed. He explains that the worst part of the dream is that he cannot wake up. Sophia mentions the party, and David realizes that this interaction is in fact the dream. He talks with his psychologist about his healing process. His face is covered in scars. His body feels broken. He undergoes painful treatments, but nothing fully restores his appearance. He tries to convince doctors to use experimental procedures to fully heal his face, but they decline and present him with a face prosthetic. He isolates himself, wearing the silicone mask to hide his face. The board at his company conspires against him, using the excuse that he is not fit to maintain control. He tries to reconnect with Sophia, but he sees the hesitation in her eyes. It is apparent that she struggles with his changed appearance and demeanor. Sophia agrees to meet David out for a drink. He arrives at a club wearing his mask, and he sees Sophia standing at the bar with Brian. He approaches them, and Brian asks why he's been isolating himself and why he's taking his problems out on a girl he's only met one time. David gets drunk from across the bar, watching Sophia and Brian having a good time from a distance. He belligerently approaches Sophia and tries to relive the night they first met and tells her to be honest with him him, to which she replies, "I'll tell you in another life when we're both cats." Sophia goes home and David calls out Brian for telling Jolie she was a fuck buddy. They part ways and images flood David's head of Brian and Sophia hooking up. He lays down in the street and passes out. The next morning, he is woken up in the middle of the street by Sophia, who expresses that she still cares for him and wishes he wouldn't have gotten into the car with Jolie. We cut to David talking to McCabe while sketching Sophia. McCabe reminds him that his face has been miraculously healed and to take off his mask. David recounts his memory that the doctor reached out to him and offered new groundbreaking reconstructive surgery that can successfully restore his face. He took the risk, and when Sophia removes the silicone mask, his old reflection stares back at her. She once again loves him without hesitation. With his face restored, David and Sophia fall into a passionate and seemingly perfect relationship. He mends his friendship with Brian. However, strange things begin happening. Distorted memories and odd shifts in reality. He has dreams of looking in the mirror to see his face distorted and waking up next to Jolie instead of Sophia. He ties Jolie up as she pleads that she is in fact Sophia and that he needs to wake up. Panic sets in as his mind unravels. He is unable to tell what is real and what is a dream. He is arrested for beating Sophia, but the pictures of Sophia's disfigured face that are shown to him are who he perceives as Jolie. Brian picks David up from prison and reminds David that Jolie died in the accident and that he stole Sophia off of him only to physically abuse her. He leaves David, telling him to never speak to him again. David ends up in a bar and Edmund Ventura approaches him. He tells him he has an explanation for everything and that he can take control of the situation. David wishes the entire bar would shut the fuck up and they instantly stop talking. He looks around to see that the music has stopped and the entire bar is staring at him in silence, appearing to be waiting for their next command. McCabe helps David remember the events that led up to this. He is investigating a murder that David allegedly committed, though David insists he's innocent. Through flashbacks, we see David entering Sophia's apartment, and the pictures on the fridge and the sketches that she saved are all of Jolie. She confronts David and kicks the shit out of him, thinking he's an intruder. He asks who she is, and she says her name is Sophia. She leaves the room, and when David follows, he sees Sophia again, and they embrace in a hug. David and Sophia are seen in bed having sex, and partway through, we see Sophia turn into Jolie. David screams, "What the fuck is happening?" The sex turns violent, and he suffocates Jolie with a pillow, which actually turns out to be Sophia, who is killed in confusion. McCabe explains that David killed Sophia because he treated Jolie carelessly, and his deranged feelings of guilt may have turned Sophia into Jolie. David knows this wasn't right, and that the world around him isn't real. He sees a commercial for life extension on the prison television and starts having a panic attack. McCabe and a police officer rush David to a company called Life Extension with a court order. They specialize in cryogenics and offer something called a lucid dream, a simulated paradise for those who want to escape reality. As the representative explains the lucid dream, everything clicks for David. Unable to cope with his injuries, he signed up for a program where his consciousness would be placed into a simulated reality. His face, his perfect life, Sophia's love, it was all a dream. David runs out of the room screaming he wants to wake up and he needs tech support. Edmund appears in the lobby, and as David's reality continues to break apart, he explains the shocking truth as they take the elevator to the roof. Edmund explains that he must take control of himself in order to take control of the lucid dream, and that the entire dream is David's own creation. The dream was spliced the moment he fell asleep in the street after the night at the club. Nothing was real in the traditional sense after he woke up to Sophia's voice. David barely knew her in real life, but in the lucid dream, she was his savior. David asks what happened with his real life after the splice, and Edmund explains the part of his life that was erased was lonely. After sleeping in the street, he got up and never saw Sophia again. He isolated himself for months, longing for her, and he couldn't stand the pain. He saw an ad for life extension and signed the contract. He put his affairs in orders and swallowed a bottle of pills. After David's death, a memorial was held to which Sophia showed up, visibly upset and crying, insinuating that she really never got over him. David and Edmund appear on the rooftop where he is given a choice to stay in the dream forever and return to Sophia, or wake up to reality by jumping off the roof and facing his biggest fear of heights. Edmund tells him that things are very different now and his finances won't last long, implying that they are very far into the future. David tells him that he doesn't want to dream anymore, but he wishes to see Sophia one last time. She appears on the rooftop and they kiss. David points out the irony of the situation, stating that he's frozen, she's dead, and he's in love with her. She says that she'll find him again, and he responds he'll see her in another life when they're both cats. He runs to the edge of the building and looks back at her one last time before stepping off the edge. He free falls for an extended amount of time, reliving flashbacks of his life. We hear a life extension technician say, "Open your eyes." It is implied that David is waking up in the real world, but we don't know if that is the case or if this is just a transition into another dream. Vanilla Sky is a fascinating cinematic experience that defies easy categorization. It blends elements of psychological thriller, romance, and science fiction into a deeply introspective and emotionally charged story. The disorienting shifts between dream and reality and the hauntingly beautiful cinematography create an experience that's as immersive as it is perplexing. The film challenges viewers to question their own perceptions. What is real, what is a dream, and what is merely a construct of the mind? It also raises profound questions about the nature of identity, happiness, and the consequences of our choices. Tom Cruise delivers one of his most nuanced performances, capturing both the charm and fragility of David Ames. His transformation from an arrogant, seemingly untouchable playboy to a man tormented by existential dread is both compelling and tragic. The supporting performances from Penelope Cruz and Cameron Diaz add depth to the emotional stakes. The non-linear storytelling can be confusing, particularly on a first watch, and some may find the pacing uneven during a series of fragmented and surreal sequences. Its intricate details and subtle clues become more apparent with each revisit. For those willing to engage with its complex themes and embrace its dreamlike logic, it offers a uniquely haunting and philosophical cinematic experience. In the end, it is less about solving a mystery and more about feeling the weight of a life lived, lost, and reimagined. It's an exploration of love, regret, and the human desire to rewrite our own stories. Overall, I give Vanilla Sky a 7.9 for a mesmerizing, polarizing, and deeply philosophical thriller that may frustrate some but captivate others with its surreal beauty and emotional depth.